So it's no secret that United do need a new centre forward, and I've made videos on both João Felix and Cody Gakpo, who are both players who could play the centre forward role but more as a trequartista false 9. But in this video we're going to be analysing the Dortmund wonder kid who could give Ten Hag a similar sort of striker to the one that Pep has in Erling Haaland. And once we break down his FB ref report statistically and look at how he would fit into this United side from a tactical point of view, you'll probably see what I mean. But before I go any further, let me tell you why you should consider downloading the OneFootball app, because it's become my all-in-one place for keeping up to date with the latest football news, whilst also being able to follow Manchester United specifically, giving me access to all the latest news, videos and articles. It's also the best place to keep up to date with any live football, as during the World Cup they had a live ticker for any updates on the match, confirmation for the lineups as well as a rating for each player, and also all the team stats you need as well to get a better in-depth view of how the game played out rather than just the goals scored. So if you want to support the channel and think you'd also be interested in looking at the OneFootball app, I'll leave it linked in the description and comments below. So Youssoufa Moukoko is the next starler off of the Borussia Dortmund production line, and having only just turned 18 whilst at the World Cup with Germany, and already having developed into a key player for Dortmund in the starting 11, it's pretty obvious why there's so much hype around him, particularly because his contract at the Westfalenstadion actually expires at the end of the season, meaning that come this January he can start talking to other clubs, and that's got every super club on alert. With Manchester United obviously being one of those, but we need to actually break down, are United being drawn into a player who's being massively overhyped at such a young age and could turn out to be a flop, as many United previous signings have turned out to be. But we first need to define what type of forward Moukoko actually is, and he's definitely a different sort of player to both Cody Gakpo and João Felix. Moukoko is definitely more of a traditional number 9 and fulfills a role that I would describe as an advanced forward, a player who, unlike Cody Gakpo or João Felix or even someone like Lautaro Martinez, isn't going to drop into deep positions, being the player to bounce the ball off and link the attack. He's actually quite technically awkward, reminds me a lot of Erling Haaland in this sense, and even someone like Mo Salah, not being as aesthetically pleasing from a technical point of view as players like Martial and Felix, but being a player who is a lot more efficient. And when you watch him play, you'll kind of see why I do compare him to Erling Haaland, even though it's hard to fully describe the similarities between them. If I had to describe it, it's just this robotic efficiency that both players have, and when we look at his FB ref report we can see this in clearer detail. Just like they were with Erling Haaland, Borussia Dortmund are sitting on an absolute goal machine with Moukoko, as despite playing just 1,200 minutes over the last 365 days, when compared against every other forward in Europe's top 5 leagues, Moukoko actually ranks in the mid-90th percentiles for both his non-penalty XG and his non-penalty goals, and the most impressive thing to me is that he only slightly overperforms his non-penalty XG by 0.01 per 90, recording 0.6 non-penalty goals per 90, meaning that Moukoko is currently averaging a goal well over every other game. And the fact that he doesn't massively overperform his non-penalty XG is also a fantastic sign, as I mentioned in my Gonzalo Ramos analysis video, which you can check out, which will be linked in the description below, if a striker is producing top level output but he is massively overperforming his non-penalty XG, this could be a sign that he's just going through a hot streak of finishing, and when his finishing returns to his normal ability, those goals will dry up, because whilst a player could be scoring a high amount of non-penalty goals per 90, if they're not getting that non-penalty XG, which is the quality of chances they're getting per 90, if they can't get high numbers in that consistently, then their goal scoring even over the short period is unsustainable, and in the long term when they naturally revert to their non-penalty XG, those goals are going to dry up, as they did for Christoph Piontek, the former Genoa and AC Milan striker, who is a perfect example of someone who overperformed his non-penalty XG massively, but over the next season he returned to the normal and the goals just dried up. And that is the number one fear when hyping up young strikers who have just emerged on the European scene. But let's not take anything away from Moukoko's finishing ability, as he's got that ice cold composure and ability to shift the ball out of his feet into a shooting position very effectively and very quickly, and he is deadly in front of goal, as his goal against Bayern Munich proved, as the ball wasn't even out of his feet, but in a flash it flashed past Neuer into the Bayern net, and this is a sort of ability that Moukoko has. And it's his predatory movement in the box and his wonderful first time takes when he receives the ball in congested areas that set him up for these shooting opportunities, and when you watch him play, it's hard to believe he's only 18 as he has such decisiveness and composure when in front of goal. However, unlike forwards like João Felix and Cody Gakpo and even Anthony Martial as well, Moukoko is very one-dimensional and does rely solely on his goal scoring as his primary source of offensive output. Although this isn't saying that he doesn't contribute outside of the box, often we do see him dropping off and linking the play with one-touch interplay, and his pace and movement does make him a threat when Dortmund counter-attack. Moukoko records an XG assisted rate of just 0.11 per 90, ranking in just the 30th percentile. And he also doesn't really rank highly for any other ball progression metrics, including his progressive passes and even his dribbles, where he only ranks in the 70th percentile. However, he is producing high level defensive output in all thirds of the pitch, so he's definitely a hard working forward and definitely would suit a pressing system like Ten Hag's. So whilst Youssoufa Moukoko's goal scoring ability does in my opinion put him in the conversation as potentially being a generational talent, he certainly isn't a complete forward in the same way that players like João Felix and Cody Gakpo could be considered, and he does kind of remind me of how Haaland was, being a very athletic and physical centre forward, but one whose primary focus is on scoring goals. And Moukoko, just like Haaland, has this kind of robotic instinct of where to position himself, how to control the ball and how to finish the ball past the keeper. And if you watch Moukoko play, you'll see he's very efficient with his chances, knowing when to release a shot and when to move on the ball, and making sure that when he does get a chance, it's from a high value shooting opportunity. And we can see this as he ranks in the 87th percentile for his non-penalty XG per shot, showing that Moukoko is very methodical about his shooting and not going to be one of those erratic shooters that's shooting every time they get around the box, and ultimately wasting a lot of good attacking opportunities. So Moukoko is essentially a centre forward who specialises in goal scoring. He's not going to offer too much outside of the box, he's not going to have much creativity, he's not going to be a big chance creator, but he is going to score a high volume of goals. And as I've said, he does remind me of Erling Haaland, but also Julian Alvarez, as all three of these young strikers seem to have this very direct style. They aren't concerned with the style of their play, they can all be very combative and very clunky at times, but ultimately they're so good at getting into shooting opportunities and such good finishers that they're just goal scoring machines at this point. And you saw the impact that Julian Alvarez had when he came into that Argentina side, being the embodiment of a true natural goal scorer. Having the sort of instinct that you can't really teach to young forwards. It's almost like they've just got it in their blood, and they've continuously developed all the attributes needed to be a top level goal scorer, whether that be the composure, the finishing technique, the movement off the ball, or even the physicality needed to get into certain goal scoring positions. He's got 6 goals and 4 assists in 14 Bundesliga games this season, and so even though that is hugely impressive for an 18-year-old, he's still not produced that top level output over a long enough period of time to fully judge him. And so you can't deny that signing Moukoko at this point in his career would definitely be a risk. However, he will be available for free at the end of the season, and so Moukoko will be a risk that many top clubs will be willing to take when his contract does eventually expire. But the big question is, should Ten Hag sign him at Manchester United? And personally, I think he'd be a very good signing. He'd definitely be more of an advanced forward than a deeper lying forward like Cody Gakpo or João Felix, and at the moment certainly isn't at the level as players like Victor Osimhen, Ivan Toney or Lautaro Martinez. And so with Moukoko, you're definitely signing him for the potential, and the potential was there, and he could definitely be a player like Dembele, like Haaland, who explodes in his early 20s. I think that's definitely a possibility. And so if I was United this summer, I'd be doing everything I could to sign him, but I would still look to bring in someone like Cody Gakpo who can also be a first choice striker, and Moukoko be edged into the team rather than having all the responsibility at his feet at such a young age, as he does need to develop as well, and he can be that alternative option, still playing between 30 and 40 games per season. And I genuinely think he's a player who could be hitting the world class level as early as 21, 22 years old, and so I definitely think that all of the top clubs, including Manchester United, should be pursuing him this summer, particularly because he will be available